US President Barack Obama is being accused of bowing to China and snubbing the Dalai Lama by postponing a meeting with Tibet's spiritual leader, who's in Washington. The move breaks an 18-year tradition of visits to the White House by the Dalai Lama. He won't meet the president until after Obama's visit to Beijing in November, where he'll be holding talks with the Chinese President Hu Jintao. In Washington, the spiritual leader received a Human Rights Award and met with US lawmakers. Well, for more on this breaking president, we can now cross to our correspondent Priya Sridhar, who's with James Pinkerton. He's from the New America Foundation. Now, Priya, this is the first time in 18 years that the exiled Tibetan leader has visited Washington without meeting the president. What's been the reaction to this in the US and indeed elsewhere?
I mean, many people can't believe this. They say, how could President Obama essentially blow off the Dalai Lama? So officials are saying that the decision not to meet was mutual. But is President Obama essentially saying that diplomatic relations with China are more important than the Dalai Lama? Well, joining me to help answer that question is James Pinkerton from the New America Foundation. James, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
So, first of all, President Obama has always prided himself on being a champion of the people and a man of human rights. I mean, was this a surprise that he wasn't going to meet with the Dalai Lama?
I think it was a surprise, but I think it's in keeping with the Obama administration strategy beginning in January that the United States was overextended, that we'd let too many extraneous issues get in the way of core American objectives. And so, for example, the Obama administration chose to take the issue of missiles in Poland and the Czech Republic off the table in relations with Russia, presumably to get the Russians help on Iran, terrorism, whatever other issues might be. And so back to China. China, they think to themselves that what's most important is probably the financial relationship between China and the United States. Then, presumably, they have ambitions for the Chinese to help them on climate change, Iran, and so on. And they just made the calculation, look, China can help us with those problems, but the Dalai Lama cannot.
So, I mean, how is this going to look to the rest of the world? This is the first time in 18 years that a U.S. president hasn't met with the Dalai Lama. And, back when President Obama was still a candidate and campaigning in the 2008 election, many people were a little worried that he was inexperienced when it came to foreign policy. Is this an example of his inexperience? Do you think this is sloppy foreign relations? How is this going to look?
I think it'll look like an acknowledgement by America that the world has changed, and that America can no longer interfere in the internal affairs of other countries the way it used to, without significant pushback. I mean, it's perfectly okay for an American president to say that we support rights for Tibet and so on like that. But then it's perfectly okay for the Chinese to say, listen, we're not going to help you on X, Y, and Z issues. In the long run, power follows fundamentals. And if you don't have real power, then the great powers of the world, China, Russia, the United States, the European Union, are going to act accordingly.
And do you think that, critics of this decision have said that China is beginning to dictate a little too much in this country? What do you think about that?
Well, I think Americans, as long as China has a significant chunk of our economy hostage, are going to have to get used to the fact that it's not really an American world anymore. It's sort of a G2 world, the United States and the People's Republic of China, and Americans are going to get used to it. Other countries have been down this road before when they woke up one day and realized that they couldn't just snap their fingers and get the rest of the world to do what they wanted it to.
And, one of the things that I found very interesting was White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs said that this will essentially give the United States a platform to talk about the Tibetan issue with the Chinese. Is that a reasonable explanation? What do you think?
That's just spin. I mean, look, they made a decision. We want better relations with China, and the Dalai Lama is expendable. And anything they say other than that is what they think they need to say to keep faith with Richard Gere and the Free Tibet crowd and so on. And that's an important constituency inside the Democratic Party, but I don't think anybody seriously would take him at his word on that.
And so what do you think is going to happen from here? President Obama has said that he does want to meet with the Dalai Lama after his visit to Beijing. Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think this is going to kind of sour relations with the Dalai Lama forever?
No, I'm sure the Dalai Lama has time in his hands to come to America anytime to meet with the president. But I think the main test, and I think this is where the Obamans are headed, is can we get the Chinese to work with us on Afghanistan, Iran, climate, finance, and so on. And if those things work out for the Obama administration, just as Richard Nixon's trip to China back in 1972 worked out in terms of creating a counterweight to the Soviet Union during the Cold War, bypassing Taiwan, which is sort of the Dalai Lama of its time in terms of being a small but potent symbolic issue that ultimately proved expendable in the scheme of things. If the Obama strategy is vindicated by subsequent events, then, frankly, other than a few Hollywood activists, nobody's going to worry too much about the Dalai Lama.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what, if any, repercussions this decision has for President Obama.